So hello guys, welcome to another video. So in the previous one we learned that how ENS works at the base level, right? So we wrote a simple smart contract that takes the input of a string and then maps it to your wallet address, right? So there was two function. One function was to register this relationship and another function was to retrieve the wallet address when you give the name. So if you haven't watched it yet, I would prefer if you do so. Okay, so today, like while talking about this UPI, right, one idea came to my mind that what if like we can build a simple UPI sort of system in our smart contract itself, right? But how does it work actually? So in order to understand that, we have to understand that the architecture of UPI at the very base, right? So UPI, like in like for those who doesn't know, like it's sort of a simple QR or a link sent to someone. Like you can just scan the QR and pay to that person, sort of like a merchant. So you go to a shop, the merchant has a QR code, and as a person who is buying something, you just scan the QR code and you pay that amount. But how does it actually happen? Like, do it like the does the UPI like transfers the money itself? Like, does the money get settled by the UPI itself? No, right? Because yesterday we learned that each UPI ID is mapped to the bank account. So that must mean that the bank is the one settling the amount. But how does it do? Like how does the bank knows that I am trying to move money from one account to another, or like I am trying to pay to this specific person, right? So here is where approval comes along. So this is how UPI works. So let's say we have a merchant QR code, right? We have the merchant QR code. Cool. So now when we as a person scans the QR code, right? So let's say me or let's say scans the QR code. So it could be said that a request is being made. So like when the merchant, you have often seen many devices, right, wherein like a small device that shows the QR code, and you are the one who scans the QR code and the amount automatically comes up. So that could be said as like raising a request. So raising a request. So the merchant raises a request, right, that this is the amount of money that you need to pay. Then you scans the QR code, right, and you give your UPI pin. Now after giving the UPI pin, what does it happen? So basically in this stage what you are doing is that you are approving your bank account to settle, let's say, the X amount of money from your account to the merchant account. So this scanning the QR code and then putting of your PIN ID is actually this step wherein you are approving your bank account that you can settle this much amount of money from my account to the merchant account. Then this approval goes to the bank account, right, and the bank account settles the original like payment. So a life cycle of the UI could be set as like request, someone is like raising the request, then somebody is approving, like us, we are approving the request, and then the bank account is settling the request. So request, approve and settle, like this is the life cycle of UPI. So life cycle of UPI could be set in this. Now in order to create a smart contract of a similar kind, we need to have a smart contract with the same architecture, right? So if I want to create a UPI for web3, right, so what we have to do is we have to write a smart contract where there would be a request method wherein merchant would be able to raise request, right, that this is the amount of money that I want to receive. Next we would have to have a approve where like using this, you or the payer, like who is going to pay, payer can approve the tokens for the smart contract to pay, right. So basically using the approve method, you or the payer would approve the smart contract to settle or use this much amount of tokens, right. Basically we will tell the smart contracts that you are allowed to take this much amount of tokens from my wallet address to the merchant wallet address, right, and at the end of the day it would settle. So settle is where the smart contract would pull the X tokens from our account, then settle it to the merchant account, right. So if we want to create a UPI for web3, then we have to create this simple method like settle, wherein like the smart contract would be able to settle the tokens. So these are the three functions we are currently looking at. One would be request, one would be approve, and one would be settle, right. Now if you know the basics of a ERC20 token, right, so ERC20 is basically a protocol for tokens, right, so it's a standard. So that already comes with this approve method, right. So the ERC20 protocol or the ERC20 standard already comes with the approve method. So that is something we don't have to write on our own, we can just we can just call it. So we have to mainly look at these two, request and settle. So let's dive into our smart contract and see that what have we actually done, right. So if we come to our smart contract, so as you can see in the like in the first line we have just defined the compiler version, that is it. On the next line we have defined this interface IERC20. So IERC20, as I said, is a standard of smart contract for all the tokens there is. So all the ERC20 tokens like USDT, Ethereum, etc., everything are ERC20 tokens, right. So like it contains a lot of inbuilt functions, but here we are telling that we don't need all these functions, we only need this transfer from, right. So transfer from takes three parameters, that is from, like from whom it is sending to like to whom I want to send it, and the amount, like the amount of tokens that I want to send, and it returns a boolean that whether the payment has been done or not, right. Next, in the smart contract we start by creating a struct. So struct could be said as like a structure of the object. So in this case we are creating a structure for our request, right. So in the UPI system, like when the merchant using their device like is raising a request, right, in the same way we are raising a request in this format. So the request structure would have a pair, a payee, a token, amount, and paid, like boolean, so whether it's paid or not. One important thing to like keep in mind is that here we are defining like a term pair, right. So here the merchant can either specify that who is able to pay, or the merchant can keep it empty by telling that anybody can pay it. So let's say in this case, when the merchant is raising the request, if he mentions that only account X can pay. So then you have to have the account X, and from that account X only you would be able to pay the amount. Like no other account you would not be allowed to pay with any other account, right? So in the same way, like for that reason we are keeping the pair. So we are giving the freedom to the merchant that you can define that who do you want the payment from, or you can just keep it empty and anybody can pay to you, right? Next we create a array of this request, like we define it. Now for the main function we create a function called create request. So this function would be able to create request for the merchant. So here we are taking the pair. Now this is an optional field, like either or, you can define the pair or not. Then we are taking the token. So like in which token you want to pay, maybe in USDC, maybe in Ethereum. So we are like giving the merchant the freedom to define their recommendation of token that they want to receive the payment in, and the amount, like in how much amount you want to receive the payment, right? Next we do is what, we just push this request, like all with all the details and everything, we push it to our array, right? So in the array it would be sort of like, so let's say if our request is an array, so like whenever we push a request, so like that request gets stored into this, like request 1, request 2, etc., right? And as a result of which we can also get the ID from it. So like whenever, let's say I say that request 0, right, so that means that request 1, so we are also getting a request ID from it. So by giving a proper request ID we can essentially like get that which request we want to fetch and pay, right? Okay, so this is basically what we are doing. We are creating a request and we are returning the ID of it. So this length, like array dot length, I think these are the basics that I think you would know, but if you don't understand, let me know. We'll cover more basics of it, right? But yeah, so like request dot length -1, so we are returning the request ID after pushing it to the array. The next function we are working on is the function of paying. So like this pay actually happens from the smart contract side, and when does this happen? This happens after approving. So if you like directly call this pay method, then it won't work. So first you have to approve, because as we have seen previously, like this is the life cycle, right? So when a request, after a request has been raised, we have to first approve it, then after approving we have to settle it, right? So in the correct fashion we are creating a pay method so that the smart contract, like after he has got the approval, he can go for the payment. So here we are fetching the correct request by using the request ID as I mentioned earlier. Next we are checking the boolean flag of paid. So like if paid is true, then your payment is already paid, and if it's not, like if it's false, then we can proceed. Now in this case we are checking that whether the merchant has defined any sort of pair or not. So if any pair is defined, right, so then only we go to our next stage and we see that whether the person who is calling this function, or whether the wallet address who has initiated this call is the same as the defined pair or not. So this required statement is for the same. So like here in simple we are checking that if the pair is mentioned, then whether the initiator of the call is the same as the pair defined or not. If not, like if the pair is different, then we say ki not authorized pair, and if pair is same, then we proceed on to the transfer from method. So this is the standard of how we send tokens from one place to another. So we define like the interface IERC20, then we like give the token, that in which token we want to transfer, then we give the transfer from, and then again we have three parameters like from, to, and amount, like as you can see. So we give the parameters as usual, and at last we just say ki like art.paid equal to true. that means that our request has been successfully paid, right? So this is how we do it, and this is a base of the call, like as you can see from here. So let me zoom in a bit here. So as you can see that we have called this function using the create request, and initially I have defined the pair to be 0 like default. So like anybody can pay, like I have not defined any specific wallet address, so anybody can pay to our request. And the next I have defined the token, so this token address is the USDC in base, right? And next we have defined the amount, so this is basically 1 USDC. So since like 1 USDC has like 10 to the power 6 decimal places, right? So like this much amount means like 1 USDC. So basically as a merchant I have created a request that you need to pay of 1 USDC, right? So from here we have got our ID. So since I have created one request earlier, so now it is 1. So now after that we need to approve, right? Now as I was saying that this approve already exists in every ERC20 token, and since this contract address is already of USDC, which is a ERC20 token, so we just using for which we so using just cast, we just do key like cast send to this specific contract address, we are approving. So we are approving our smart contract of this much amount. So like basically using this command we are telling our smart contract that you are allowed to spend 1 USDC from my wallet address. Next on the third call we are just calling the pay method, that is it. So we are calling the pay method with the request ID, of course. So since our request ID was 1 in the initial call, so here we pass the request ID and our call has been successfully made, right? So here as we can see that all the transaction has been successful. Now if we go to the smart contract level, as we can see on the first method we have like called, like we have created the request, then we have approved, and the last we have paid actually. So I hope you got something out of this. This is a very interesting experiment that I am doing. Like I am also learning new things every day, and I hope that you are learning something from this type of videos as well. Thank you for tuning in. See you on the next one.